You know what, I'm almost tempted to say you don't even need this review, because frankly, if you laughed at that, that should tell you whether or not this movie is for you. Oh, you want to stick around? Well, be my guest. Silence of the Hams is, at least at first, a spoof of the acclaimed thriller Silence of the Lambs, though like many parody films in recent times, it also selects a wider pool of targets, including the likes of Psycho, Basic Instinct, and many, many other big films of the era. It strings these together into a loose plot dealing with an FBI agent, oh so subtly named Joe D. Foster, conducting an investigation. But frankly, this is just a little more than an excuse for all the weird and wacky jokes to happen. Despite a competent selection of actors, including the likes of Zane, DeLuise, Rip Torn, and many, many others, most are just relegated to little more than quick, easy cameos, on top of the actual cameos in the film by the likes of Mel Brooks and John Landis, among others. And the few who do have a decent chunk of screen time don't really amount to much. Zane as our lead doesn't seem very lively or charismatic. Most of the time he's really just there to react to the weird jokes, and is easily one of his more lackluster performances. DeLuise, meanwhile, despite being top billed and even having his face on the poster, has maybe about 10 minutes of screen time across the entire movie. He's his usual over-the-top ebullient self and does enliven things, but he isn't really channeling or parodying Anthony Hopkins' Lecter in any way, which seems like a real waste of his talent and indeed of the premise. As for the technicals, the film is pretty basic. Not unappealing, but like most recent spoof films, it's shot more like a glorified TV sketch with a lot of flat lighting and wide shots, mainly designed to accommodate for the visual gags. This is kind of an issue as, despite billing itself as a spoof of Silence and other 90s thrillers, it makes no effort to even replicate the aesthetics and just comes across like even more wasted potential. And the musical score by Palmer Fuller is completely and utterly forgettable and lacks the lunacy, bombast, or even attempt at giving its own stylistic flair that someone like, say, spoof music master John Morris was able to bring to make it truly stand out. And so we now come to the script, also written by Italian director and comedian Ezio Greggio. Despite the involvement of Brooks and Landis in cameos, he apparently didn't take any type of advice, as the film has all the familiar trappings of a latter-day parody, like, say, the movies. Poorly timed slapstick, witless and obvious wordplay, and references dumped in whenever possible, regardless of need, relevance, or actual humor. Seriously, we've got just about everything from Michael Jackson to the Addams Family to even Jurassic Park. And as a byproduct, this turns the plot into a series of dumb sketches rather than anything resembling any type of cohesion, unlike some of the genre's classics like Brooks' own Blazing Saddles or Young Frankenstein, or the Zaz Boys' Airplane or Hot Shot films. What's more, because of the scattershot approach, nothing ever shines through or even fits together, and the pacing suffers as you just slog through lame gag after lame gag in the film's clunky set pieces. All of this is really a shame, as the sometimes indulgent and over-the-top nature of a lot of these 90s thrillers would make for legitimate comedy material, and it would only take a few tweaks to take the basic formula of, say, Silence and make it into a weird and wacky comedy. It would be more consistent, stylish, and above all else, actually focused. Honestly, a film like Hams doesn't exactly leave much to be said. It's a waste, which I've oft repeated throughout this review, but that's really all that I can say in a nutshell. There's a good idea for a comedy within here somewhere, and indeed on paper, Greggio assembled some of the proper elements, but the execution completely goes the lazy, cheap, and low road, and as a result the film leaves no lasting impression and is little more than a footnote from 90s pop culture. Nothing more, nothing less. Honestly, what more can I say? I award Silence of the Hams a plastic star. Even before the advent of the Wayans and Seltzberg completely running the genre into the ground, this is a clear marker of where spoofs were on their way to, and it is pretty much the dictionary definition of wasted potential. Unless you are, and I wish to emphasize this, a die-hard fan of DeLuise, Brooks, or Zane, don't ever bother with this. It is really not worth the time.